So now we will continue our study. And this is our study sentence here from my previous video. And this is the phrase we're focusing on, having sanded. We're doing an in-depth study on this phrase. We are told that having sanded is a gerund-participle perfect. That's the name that experts and scholarly people would use. But now we know that having is an abstract proform, not a gerund, though it looks like one, not a participle. But what exactly is sanded? Well, let's find out if we can. First, we acknowledge the sanded does indeed give a hint of the perfect tense, but not much. We get the perfect flavor from the word have, used as an auxiliary verb, not from the abstract proform having, nor from the word sanded. And see, the word have is critical here. See, we have the future perfect tense and the perfect tense. All right. Second, we affirm that the word sanded is not a gerund. That is, the word is not in the ing form. So again, what exactly is sanded in this application? Is it a participle verbal, or a normal verb? To solve this problem, we must go to grammatical extremes. We must, so to speak, come in through the back door. Some might say sneak up on it a little bit. Recall that when using the abstract proform having with two genuine clauses or the adverbial clause, the pronoun you was the subject in both sentences in play in each given example. Recall also that the verbs in each sentence in play in each given example were in the active voice. We had the active voice here, will have sanded, and may apply. Okay, and we had have sanded and may apply, both in the active voice. So why is this reminder important? Well, to find out what sanded really is, what its form is, what its function is, what its essence is, we will have to sneak up behind it, sort of ambush it. And how do we do that? We make changes. First, we use sample sentences which do not share a common subject. Second, for the first sentence of each study pair, we use the passive voice for the verb, not the active. This is why I mentioned subjects and verb voice in my previous video. These two minor changes create grammatical opportunities that previously had not existed. So here we have the passive voice, has been, for the verb. Here we have the active, may apply. All right, so here's our flavor of the perfect tense, right here in our first sentence. All right, now we go through the process that I use in my system. I have levels called genuine, synthetic, and elliptical. That's how changes are made. That's how the mind works. It works at a fast speed, probably faster than the speed of light. It does these things very quickly. So we omit the word has and we omit the period. Then we insert the abstract proform having. That's what we learned in our last video, having. And we insert the comma. We make this a lowercase y. And then we're left with something. The entire wall having been sanded, you may now apply the primer. So here it's synthetic. This piece must be attached to this piece. It's synthetic. It must be joined to something. All right. Now we see here, like, oh, I recognize that figure there. That's a condition phrase. That's from my other previous videos, condition phrase. And we know with condition phrases, you may omit having been, and you have the net result, the entire wall sanded. You see, you have your condition phrase, but it's really, really refined. Right? The entire wall sanded, comma, you may now apply the primer, period. So you see clearly that sanded is now a participle, functioning as an adjective or a noun complement. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. We notice something profound here in the passive-active pair. Inserting the abstract proform having not only initiates the elliptical process of sentence formation, but also gives us something totally unexpected, a condition phrase. And we know from our study of condition phrases from my previous videos that we can safely then omit the phrase having been, yielding an even more refined form of condition phrase. Okay, that's what we did. We see then that sanded is in a participle form. But is it a participle verbal? Is it functioning as an adjective or noun complement? Yes, it is. It started out as a predicate adjective. Here's wall, and here in your predicate side is sanded. It's your predicate adjective. It then transformed into an anaphoric contiguous adjective. The entire wall sanded. Okay, it's contiguous, they're beside each other. An anaphoric. The participle modifies or complements backward. That's anaphoric. However, from the sanded side of the phrase, having sanded, okay, that's our original study, the present tense flavor is weaker than it is from the having side, okay? From the sanded side, the perfect tense flavor is weaker than what it is from the having side, and you would have seen that in my previous video, all right? We could simply omit the verb phrase has been from the first genuine clause in the first sentence pair, moving directly to the entire wall sanded. The mind likely does this automatically. However, I have mapped out each intricate step to demonstrate the proclivity that the abstract proform having has for teaming up with past participles, including the past participle been, which we'll talk about in the future. So is sanded a participle verbal here? Yes, but only in the given genuine clause and condition phrase. That's the only way this is actually a participle verbal, and that's important, all right? Sanded is not a participle verbal in having sanded. And that's the whole reason we're doing this study. We're trying to find out what's going on here. And why do we say this? Well, see for yourself. Having sanded the entire wall, okay, that was our original adverbial phrase. We have having and sanded. And we know from our study that having is an abstract proform, but we couldn't figure out what sanded was. The entire wall sanded, all right, that's a condition phrase. I made that clear in this video and other videos. So you have wall sanded. You have your noun and your participle acting as an adjective or a noun complement. So that's pretty clear. Now, having sanded, we still don't know what sanded is. We don't know exactly yet. So hang in there. Common sense alone tells us that the sanded in the adverbial phrase cannot function the exact same way as it does in the condition phrase. In the condition phrase, sanded is modifying or complementing wall. In the adverbial phrase, sanded is not modifying or complementing having. So what do we finally conclude? All right, we started our study here with our study sentence, and we focused on this phrase right here. You're probably getting tired of hearing it. I conclude that the word sanded in the phrase having sanded is indeed a participle, but not an ordinary past participle, nor a participle verbal. I refer to this odd yet interesting participle as this, the abstract past participle. So there I said it. I call it the abstract past participle. In my grammar system, for most normal verbs, we would not have two main participles, we'd have three. And that's what I'm trying to present in these videos. I'm telling you that there's a different kind of participle that no one's ever talked about, and we're doing it here for the first time. So here's an example of a normal verb. You have sand, your present basic tense. You have another form of sand, an inflection. Sanding, that's your future progressive tense. You have sanded, that's your past basic tense. You're familiar with these for sure. Then you have your gerund. That's an inflection or a form of the word sand acting as a noun, right? It's a noun as subject in the sentence. Then you have your present participle, which you're probably familiar with, but it's acting as an adjective or a noun complement. Sanding, it's the ing form, and it's cataphoric. It's modifying or complementing forward. What kind of block? A sanding block. All right? Then there's the past participle. It's still functioning as an adjective or noun complement, but it's in the past participle form. All right? And this one's cataphoric. It's modifying or complementing forward. Sanded wood. What kind of wood? Sanded. Then here the chair sanded. All right, now that's a condition phrase. You have sanded, past participle, and it's modifying or complementing, but it's doing it in the anaphoric fashion. In other words, backwards. All right, referring backwards. And here we finally have my innovation, the abstract past participle. It's abstract. It fits in with my abstract concepts, which no one has figured out to this point after over 100 years of American English grammar. Here's your abstract proform having, and here's your abstract past participle. They have a thing, a natural thing. They kind of want to work together. When we speak, when we think, these words kind of migrate toward each other. Having, sanded. Sanded is your abstract past participle. All right? Took a long time to get here, but we finally got there. Throughout this study, which spanned almost 30 years, I sensed that some words seemed to have an affinity for others. At some point, I noticed that the word having seemed to like to be beside past participles, especially the word been. It's almost as if some words, when placed beside others, tend to alter the meaning or function of the others naturally. It makes one wonder if there might be some deep archetypical language, one that over time, a very long period of time, is trying to surface, trying to tell us that there essentially in the universe is only one language, the language itself. Who knows? It's just a thought. Anyway, there you have it. I explained in this video and the previous one how having is definitely an abstract proform. It can't be anything else. And there's a thing that I call the abstract past participle. And I showed why we have one. And I had to cheat a little bit. I had to go back and work my way through the condition phrase, as I showed, right, to see how that sneaky little thing gets in there, how that word gets in there, and why people haven't been able to classify it or give it a name. And there it is. So thanks for being incredibly patient, and we'll see you in the next video.